My mother slid an envelope across the dinner table like she was presenting an award. She pushed it straight to Priya and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "This is for someone who actually made something of themselves." The whole table laughed. I sat there with my fork in my hand, completely still. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all of them smiling, nodding, like what just happened was completely normal, like I wasn't even sitting there. Then my Uncle Ray leaned back in his chair and said, "Did you even bring anything tonight, Delaney?" More laughter. I looked down at my plate. The food had gone cold. The room smelled like pot roast and expensive candles, and something I can only describe as satisfaction. Theirs, not mine. None of them knew what was sitting in my bank account, but they were about to find out. My name is Delaney. I'm 34 years old, and I want to tell you exactly how I got to that dinner table and exactly what happened when I finally stood up from it. I grew up in a family that loved loud. Loud opinions, loud celebrations, loud comparisons. My sister Priya was the one they always praised. The 4-year university, the corporate title, the friends who played tennis at the country club. She walked into every room and people turned toward her like she was the sun. I was the quiet one, the one who went to community college because that's what we could afford, the one who taught herself design from YouTube tutorials and free online courses at midnight after working a customer service shift that left my feet aching. No connections, no financial safety net, no one in my corner cheering me on. Mom never tried to hide it. When Priya graduated, the family threw a party. When I finished my associate's degree, Mom said, "Good, now find something stable." When Priya got promoted, the group chat lit up with celebration emojis. When I landed my first real design client, I told Mom on the phone and she said, "Just make sure you're saving money, Delaney. Freelance isn't reliable." I spent years trying to earn something from her, approval, recognition. Just once, I wanted her to look at me the way she looked at Priya. But eventually, I stopped waiting. I went quiet. I put my head down and I built something entirely on my own. I wasn't polished, I wasn't praised, but I had a number sitting in my business account that would have made every single person at that dinner table go completely silent. If your family never showed up for you the way they showed up for someone else, I want you to know something right now. You are not invisible here. Subscribe to this channel and tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. And click hype to let me know you're with me. Let's go. About 3 weeks before Mom's 65th birthday, she called a family meeting. She said she wanted to talk about the investment property, a rental house she'd owned for almost 20 years. She called it a family asset. She said she wanted to reward the people who had contributed. I drove 40 minutes to that meeting. I sat down at her kitchen table with the rest of the family. The room smelled like coffee and old paperwork, the kind of smell that belongs to serious conversations. Mom reached into a folder and pulled out a single printed page. She set it in front of me. It was a deed transfer, already signed. The rental property, valued at just over $200,000, was being transferred in full to Priya. I stared at the paper. I read it twice. Mom clasped her hands on the table and said, "Priya's been helping me manage this property for years. You were never really involved, Delaney." The words landed flat and heavy, like something dropped from a height. I kept my voice calm. When was I ever given the chance to be involved? Mom waved her hand. "Don't make this about you." I didn't argue. I folded the paper once, set it back on the table, and said I needed some air. No one stopped me. I sat in my car for a long time. My hands were on the steering wheel, but I wasn't going anywhere. The engine was off. The street outside was quiet. It was later, weeks later, that I found out the full truth. A cousin, the kind of person who feels guilty keeping secrets, told me over coffee that Priya had been telling Mom for years that I didn't want the property, that I'd said it wasn't worth my time, that I had no interest in family assets. She had constructed that lie carefully, brick by brick, over years, and Mom had believed it. Or maybe she had wanted to believe it. I still don't know which one is worse. I drove home that night thinking it wasn't really about the property. It was about every year I'd been quietly erased, every assumption made without asking me, Every door closed before I could knock. The property was just the moment I finally understood how long it had been happening. The weeks that followed were a slow drip of smaller wounds. Priya started organizing the family dinners leading up to Mom's birthday celebration. Planning meetings, she called them. Guest lists, venue choices, catering decisions. I found out about the first one through my cousin Jade's Instagram story, a smiling photo of the whole family around Mom's dining room table, wine glasses raised. I wasn't there. I hadn't been told. I texted Priya. I kept it simple. I just asked why I wasn't included. She replied within 2 minutes. I didn't think you'd want to come. You're always so busy. That was it. No apology, no follow-up invitation, just a clean, efficient excuse designed to make my exclusion sound like my own preference. A few weeks later, there was a family barbecue. I went. I told myself I was going to stay calm and just be present. My Uncle Ray started asking me about work. He meant well, I think. But before I could get a full sentence out, Priya cut across me with a smile on her face. She does like computer stuff, freelance, nothing steady. A few people nodded with that particular expression, the sympathetic one that's really just pity wearing a polite face. Mom was sitting right there. She said nothing. I smiled. I told them I'd be right back. I went to the bathroom, ran cold water over my wrists, and checked my phone. A payment notification had come in while I was standing at that table, being described as nothing steady. $47,000. Cleared. I breathed. I straightened up. I looked at myself in the mirror for a moment. I went back outside and finished my plate. Then came the phone call I almost didn't recover from. Mom called me on a Tuesday evening, voice soft, almost gentle. She said she'd been thinking about me. She said she was sorry if the property situation had felt sudden. My chest opened up just a little. I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the conversation I've been waiting for. It wasn't. After about 5 minutes of warmth, she got to the point. She needed me to sign a document, a release form, she called it. It would formally remove any future claim I might have to the estate. She said it would keep the peace. She said it was the generous thing to do. Then she said, "You've always been the stronger one, baby. You don't need it like Priya does." I had a pen in my hand. I'm not even sure how it got there. I was so conditioned to shrink, to accommodate, to be the one who made things easier for everyone else. My hand actually moved toward the paper. And then something stopped. Something deep and quiet inside me just said no. I told her I needed more time to think about it. Her voice changed immediately. The warmth evaporated. She said, "Fine," in the tone that means it is not fine, and she hung up. I set the pen down, I sat there in the silence of my apartment, and I let the reality of what had almost just happened settle over me. Now, let me tell you what they didn't know. For 4 years, I had been running a design studio, not under my name, under a studio name. Clean, professional, completely separate from my personal life. No photos of me, no family connection, no mention of where I grew up or who raised me. Just the work, just the results. The studio had crossed $3.8 million in cumulative revenue. I want you to let that number sit for a second. We worked with tech startups in the early stages of building their brands. We worked with a healthcare company redesigning their patient communication systems. We had contracts with 2 Series B companies that paid us on retainer. My team was 5 people, all remote, all exceptional. We had a waiting list. The family thought freelance computer stuff meant I was scraping together small jobs and hoping the next one came in before the rent was due. They pictured inconsistency. They pictured struggle. They had no idea. One of our biggest clients, if I had ever mentioned the name at that barbecue table, my uncle would have recognized it immediately. He used their product, but I never said a word. I had kept these 2 worlds completely separate, and I had done it on purpose. Because here's the thing about revealing something. Timing matters, and I hadn't found the right moment yet. But that moment was coming. There's a woman named Carol who changed the direction of my life without making it about herself. She's 58 years old, former creative director at a major agency, now an independent business advisor. She found my work through a design forum years ago, reached out with a single message, and became the most important professional relationship I've ever had. Carol helped me structure the studio legally from the beginning. She reviewed contracts. She told me when to raise my rates and when to walk away from a client who wasn't worth the trouble. She also knew about my family. Not every detail, but enough. I'd mentioned things over the years the way you do with someone you trust. She had always told me the same thing. The moment you explain yourself to people who've already decided who you are, you lose. Wait. Let the numbers speak. When I told her about the estate release document, she didn't raise her voice. She just said, "Don't sign it, and let me make a call." She connected me with an estate attorney, a real one, not a general family lawyer. He reviewed the documents Mom had filed. What he found was that 18 months ago, Mom had quietly updated her estate documents to list Priya as the sole beneficiary across every asset, not just the rental property, everything. I hadn't been removed in a moment of anger. I had been removed slowly, deliberately over time, and I hadn't known. Meanwhile, Priya was getting louder at every family gathering. She started making comments about responsibility, about who actually shows up, in that voice that means she's talking about someone specific without saying the name. Mom let her talk, the family listened, the prized child had decided she had already won. Then Mom gave me a deadline, sign the release before the end of the month, she said, or things would be uncomfortable at the birthday celebration. I called Carol that night. We didn't talk for long. She said, "Are you ready?" I said, "Yes." We exchanged a look through the phone, the kind you can feel even when you can't see it. The plan was already moving. Mom's 65th birthday celebration was held at a rented event space about 20 minutes from the house. The room held about 60 people when I arrived. Aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, Mom's friends from church, people I hadn't seen in years. Priya had organized the whole thing. Centerpieces, a photo display, a catering spread. She had set herself up at the center of the evening without technically putting herself at the center. That was always her skill. The room smelled like fresh flowers and catered food, warm and polished. The kind of event that looks like love but is actually performance. Priya gave a speech about 40 minutes into the evening. She stood up with a glass of champagne and talked about Mom with the kind of devotion that sounds genuine until you listen to what's actually being said. She mentioned the property. She mentioned the estate planning. She used the word sacrifices twice. She talked about being the one who stepped up. People applauded. Mom dabbed her eye with a napkin. I was sitting near the back. I had arrived with a quiet request for the AV team set up earlier in the day, just a simple favor, a few minutes of their time, nothing dramatic. When the applause faded, I stood up. The room shifted. People turned. I think some of them were surprised I was even there. I thanked everyone for coming. I said I had a small announcement and that I would keep it brief. I opened my laptop. The studio's website appeared on the venue screen behind me. The logo, the client list, the case study portfolio, the awards. Clean, professional, undeniable. People started murmuring. I could hear the confusion rippling through the room like a slow wave. Then I navigated to the About page, and I typed in my full name. I uploaded the photo I had prepared. Right there in front of everyone, I connected the studio to the person standing in front of them. I said, for 4 years, this has been mine. Built without an inheritance, without a property transfer, without a single family investment. Just work. I paused. $3.8 million in revenue, and I didn't need anyone's signature to get there. The room went completely quiet. Not the polite quiet of people being respectful, the stunned quiet of people recalibrating everything they thought they knew. Mom's hand was gripping the edge of the table. Priya was staring at the screen. Her champagne glass was still raised, and she hadn't noticed. I looked at Mom directly. I kept my voice steady. I wasn't going to sign that release, not because I need anything from this estate, but because I needed you to see me clearly just once. I needed you to know that the daughter you overlooked, the one you described as not really involved, built something you never saw coming. I closed my laptop. I picked up my bag. Happy birthday, Mom. I hope tonight was everything you planned. I walked toward the door. The room stayed silent behind me. I didn't look back. Carol was standing near the exit. She didn't say anything. She just nodded once, slowly, the way someone does when they've watched you finally become the person they always knew you were. I didn't go home and celebrate. I didn't post anything. I didn't wait for my phone to light up with apologies. I went home, made tea, sat on my couch, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Stillness. Real stillness. Not the kind that comes from holding yourself back, but the kind that comes from finally letting something go. In the weeks that followed, messages came in. A cousin who asked how I had built the studio, an aunt who said she had always believed in me, which I didn't believe, but I thanked her anyway. A few people who seemed genuinely shaken and didn't quite know how to say so. Priya called once. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to it one time, standing in my kitchen, and then I deleted it. I don't need to tell you what she said because it doesn't matter anymore. Mom sent a card about 2 weeks later. Small envelope, her handwriting on the front. Inside, no apology, no explanation, just one line. I didn't know. I read it twice. Then I taped it to the wall above my desk, not because it healed anything, not because it was enough. I put it there as a reminder of what 4 years of silence and stillness and steady work can produce. When you stop trying to prove yourself to people who aren't ready to see you and you just build anyway. They spent years deciding who I was. I spent those same years proving them irrelevant. If someone in your life has ever talked over your accomplishments, minimized what you do, or decided who you were before you had the chance to show them, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments right now. Subscribe so this community can sit with you in it, because you deserve to be heard by people who actually get it. You don't owe anyone a preview of what you're building, but when it's time to show them, let it speak for itself. Click hype to help this story reach every person who has been quietly underestimated. Someone out there needs to see it today. Standing up for yourself is one of the hardest things you can do, especially when the people on the other side are your own family. If you've been there, subscribe and become part of this community. Let me know this story meant something by clicking hype, and tell me where you're watching from. I always want to know how far these stories travel. Thank you for being here.